Smashing, good afternoon, welcome back. Final session today, Array Festival 2021, celebrating digital tech and innovation in the city region. Wow, what a great afternoon we've had. We've had the story of leaner energy, so much to look forward to there for the city region. We've had an incredible live stream with our partners in Sweden as well, really getting some great insight into how we can work together, work collectively to make sure we're working towards a low carbon, a sustainable future. And we've got tomorrow still to come as well. We've got the networking in the morning, the how we can work together for a low carbon future, networking at 10 a.m. And then we've got the lightning talks in the afternoon. So still plenty left to come. Once again, thanks to the sponsors, Lancaster City Council, Fraser House, Relative Insight, Lockstep Media, SQ Digital, Chamber of Commerce, and ICS Accounting. ICS, of course, are still in the rooms. Hit the button marked rooms. They're in there if you want to speak to any of the team that you can support with any finance queries that you might have. Okay, so here's a session that I personally have been looking forward to all week. I absolutely love doing these conversations, these entrepreneur talks, these one-to-one, really getting to know people. And today we have got probably the best known name in digital tech industries, businesses in Lancaster, maybe even Lancashire, and perhaps even the Northwest as well. Mike Gibson is someone who we all know from days back with Fat Media, as chair of Digital Lancashire, very prominent in supporting economic development in the region, and now as well with the work that he and his company are doing, Miralis Data and Fuse. So Mike, very good afternoon, welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
How are you?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for all you've been doing on the Array Festival as well. It's been awesome. Really enjoyed it.
It's fantastic. It's been a great week, and a lot of this comes from work you've done as well previously. So just kick us off. How's things at the moment? How's business? What's going on?
Yeah, crazy. So for those who don't know, Miralis Data is focused on reducing carbon emissions in transport, logistics and supply chains. Carbon dioxide emissions from transport are the only growing area or the growing sector of carbon emissions across Europe. So it's absolutely critical for the future of the planet, and that we urgently address the issues of transport. And we're doing that in a whole different ways. So we're doing things like we've just developed our electric vehicle charge point management platform, Fuse, which is going great guns and having loads and loads of interest. We're also doing work in other areas of electric vehicles, so drones, doing a number of projects around drones. And we're also working on a group of specialist projects around logistics, and actually how do we optimize and make the whole supply chains and logistics process more effective. It's really exciting times.
Well, brilliant. We'll come back, I'm sure we're going to touch more on that later on, and some great stuff happening. If anybody as well is watching online, we've got the chat box open. Please do feel free to fire questions in, and as well, anybody, audience members, want to ask any questions, we've got the mic set up, so we will have those ready towards the end as well for you to step forward. Mike, as you know, you've seen me these conversations previously. We've had a bit of a chat previously, and I really like to use these as an opportunity to get to know the person behind the business. So, really interesting conversation we had the other day, talking about those early foundations for you in terms of kind of being entrepreneurial, I guess, from a young age, and getting interested in economic development as well. So tell me about what was the young Mike Gibson doing to kind of kickstart that career back?
Yeah, I think most of my family, in one way or another, that's both sides of the family, were involved in businesses locally. So, like the Waterwitch pub just down the road was built by my uncle. There's a whole raft of businesses locally that benefit from it, estate agents, different people doing different things. And I think I was always had that kind of an entrepreneurial zeal when I was a kid, but in a weird way, really. I mean, it was very much tied into the social side of it. I saw, in the early 80s, my dad was involved in working in 3 businesses, and they all collapsed because of the recession at the time. And we just thought, a lot more could have been done to preserve businesses. But I remember, I worked as a kid, did so many jobs. I worked as a deck chair attendant. I was I bingo, did a bit of work at the bingo halls, I worked in the chippies, did everything else. But every time I ever did anything, I always had an angle. Always tried to work out what I could do to make a bit of extra money. And, like so on the deck chairs, I used to go around all the businesses to get voucher codes and that, voucher leaflets and this kind of thing. And then they'd pay me to hand them out to all the people who walked down the prom. So when I was bored, I could just make money doing that. And there was always an angle and always something to do. And one of the good ones was I realised that there was money in books. So I used to get my mum when I was about 15, 16 to drive me out to auction houses. And I'd buy all the boxes of books. And there was there'd be, a quid each or whatever. And then sometimes they went up as much as a fiver and she'd think I was crazy. And I'd buy these big boxes of books, then I'd sift them all out. And then I'd get her to drive me around all the book places that I knew and sell them. And sometimes you'd be making, you buy a box of books for £1 and I've still got one in there that's worth £1,000 now, and it was real treasure finding it, but used to make all my pocket money and all my money doing that in the early days, just doing things like that, everything was always a bit of trying to find something.
Yeah. And I remember you told me about a really interesting story about going into the town clerk and it being an inspirational moment as well, was it?
Yeah, my dad had a meeting with a guy called Bill Pearson, who was the town clerk of Lancaster, which is what they call the chief executive now. And I was probably about 14 years old, and it just had a huge impression on me, because when we walked into his office, there was cabinets all the way along the wall, and then there were certificates. And you're thinking these are all to do with the city council and everything else. No, they were for all the businesses in the local area. So there was bits of product of all these businesses on these shelves, and then there were certificates saying they'd won an award or done something else. And it just showed the amount of civic pride in the leadership in the businesses which had been the kind of wealth creators and the great people who benefited this city. And you kind of then look at that attitude to it. But then you see also when you go around Lancaster, there was a lot of people who made a lot of money out of the people of Lancaster. And what they did, though, was that different times, obviously in the Victorian era, but they all said, I'm going to put that money back.
Yeah. So
you think about James Williamson, Thomas Story, Samuel Gregson, and all those names everybody recognises as, for the buildings that we see around us and some of the great architecture and things like that we've all benefited from, 100 odd years later. And you see the value of business within the context of a city and how important it is, not just to make money, which is, obviously you've got to make a profit, you've got to do what you do, but it's for the benefit of your local citizens and the people who work for you and your community and what you give back. And those have always been kind of really important things to me. And it really showed that there's this synergy between, what political policymakers do and what businesses do and how the community works, and those things should be worked together and intertwined.
It's incredible, isn't it? And it's quite interesting you say that. But before before Array, and as we were putting the event together, we did a bit of a survey, and one of the things that kind of cropped up, we asked people, what's the first thing you think about when you think of Lancaster? And so many of the responses it was National Memorial, Williamson Park. And as you say, is something that the city wouldn't have enjoyed if it hadn't been for the philanthropic mind of a previous entrepreneur. You left Lancaster, went to university, studied politics. How was that experience, and what did that kind of what footing did that give you?
Yeah, I suppose I always, one of the things I've been afraid of is trying new things and throwing myself into something. So if you're going to do politics, where would you go to go and study politics? Most people go, well, yeah, we've got to go to London School of Economics or one of the major political-based universities. Now I went to a war zone, which effectively was Belfast in the mid-80s, and effectively a civil war there, really. Kind of theory in the classrooms and practical on the streets, and saw the bombs go off and experienced all the kind of that life. Yeah. But it was very different to most of the universities I've ever been to, and university cities that we all know. And the experience of that was kind of life-changing, really. I've still got loads and loads of great friends out of there from there. It was very, very different. I mean, in terms of a political education, it was slightly different to the one I'd been through in Lancaster, to say the least. And
when and so that led from there. Where did your career take you then from university? What was the kind of first moves that you made then? Well,
when I sat there in my room in Belfast thinking about what career I was going to do, it was like where could it possibly take me? And I started to apply for political jobs. And I got a lovely rejection letter from John Smith and a load of other well-known
It was
MPs.
Labour leader.
And I'd interviewed loads of weird and wonderful politicians in my time in Northern Ireland, from Ian Paisley to Sherry Adams and stuff. So we'd really had a kind of, this big political insight. And I was really determined to go do a political career. And they just didn't want to employ anybody who'd been to Northern Ireland, I think. And I didn't have the Oxford PPE, perhaps. So what I did was I'd had enough. Through the summer I worked to get fit, just doing too much beer probably. I'd worked as a postman, and that kind of improved things a little bit. But then it was one day, and my dad just said, "Look, come on, this political thing, it ain't going to work out. You've got to get something done." So a week later, I started my job at VNU, a big Dutch publisher in the middle of Soho. So from little old, well, I was at the time I wasn't living in Lancaster. I mean, I was brought up in Heysham. And there was me, living in a little house in Heysham, and back into home and working as a postman. Next thing, I'm wandering out into the world in Soho and experiencing the bright lights and the dodgy knocking shops, and God knows what else was all around you that you could see from your window while you were at work. It was extraordinary.
I won't ask you too much on that.
Not that I went to the knocking shops.
I can say the experience of the dodgy knocking shops, but being in the city and being at VNU, what was that? I mean, sounds like a first job. Sounds like you're thrown in really deep end. What was that experience? Big company, big city. What was that experience like?
You were paid next to nothing. I mean, for start, you were on a graduate salary, and I think mine was about $5,500. I think when I started off, and I got paid. And you got commissions, which sometimes never quite materialised.
So it was sales,
quite the way you get it. So yeah, I was a salesperson on a magazine called Financial Decisions, and then I got promoted to a weekly publication called Accountancy Age, and it was a really, really tough environment. And what they did was for the interview process, which was fascinating in itself, 9 of us were interviewed at the same time. So you all sat there along a wall, and you were all interviewed, and they picked you, and you were right there in front of everybody else. And I remember one guy saying, and they said to him, "Have you experienced what pressure's like?" And he went, "Yeah, I used to work at McDonald's or something." I think it was some answer like that, and it was just everybody burst out laughing. And then the guy had to respond, and he was put under pressure. And I think got 2 of us were chosen out of that interview to then move to the next interview, and I made it through. But it was a really hard-nosed, advertising sales environment, and what was extraordinary about that was the training was brilliant. The sales training was second to none, and loads of people came through that environment who I still know now, and have gone on to do phenomenal things. Because what that sales training did was it didn't just give you the idea of how you went in to be a salesperson, how to convert, a sales opportunity. What it did was it gave you an enormous amount of confidence, and it gave you the confidence to do things like ring somebody you've never ever met before and try and pitch to them. But also to maybe get into quite uncomfortable situations by talking to massive companies and really putting yourself out there as a bit of a 21-year-old sprog, really just kind of pushing yourself in the doors. And the people who've gone on from there, I've got a friend Simon who's a multi-millionaire now. I've got friends who makes a friend Jason who makes glasses frames, and that Samuel L. Jackson and some of the biggest stars in Hollywood all wear, and there's loads of them, and I think we all benefited from that kind of first career proper job exposure, because it just gave us that that extra bit of confidence and belief in ourselves to actually go out there and do things.
It's quite interesting that, because especially, and I'm sure through this we'll get young people, graduates, coming up to the end, looking at. I mean, just quickly summarise, like typical day or something. Well, what sort of, who were you talking to? What were you doing? Were you on the phones? Are you going knocking on doors?
It's just pure cold calling. So, we had a magazine, Accountancy Age, which had a good reputation in the market. Big accountants from practice and in industry were all reading the publication, getting it sent to them in the post. So, it had a fairly good name, and there was industry databases and all this kind of thing. But what you had to do was go and convince people the value of advertising. What you were selling was a big blank white space, and the value of putting your advert there in front of those people. And without doubt, it was hard work, and you were conditioned by the kind of quality of the clients. The first few months there were really hard, and the guy who was my ad manager wanted to fire me. I think I pretty much got the impression, but we went for a meeting outside of work, and I said, just give me better clients, give me 3 weeks, and I'll prove it to you. And I did, and went on to sell a lot, sell a huge amount of stuff. But the one thing was that I was always trying to trial different things because you never know when the angle. So I used to sell, I sold loads of adverts for Lafroig whiskey because I just said, accountants, they're all typically in their 50s and 60s, they've got a lot of money, nothing better to come home and drink some whiskey. And the bloke just said, sounds brilliant, mate, and just paid a lot of money for advertising. Fantastic, but you had to think creatively and on your feet all the time. And it was that kind of cold calling energy. And people would say to you, just say, what the hell are you doing ringing me, kind of thing. You've got to just take a breath, put the phone down, move on to the next one.
Yeah,
it's hard work.
Yeah, someone's asking what was your script?
No script. All down to the training. They used to use a thing called Dipida, which was a real structured approach that gave you the foundations to sell. So you never had a script at all. You just worked the way you wanted to work, and you ended up being much more consultancy orientated. So Dipida has a thing which is definition, identification, proof, advantage, desire, action, which over 30 years ago I can remember, and I can remember every little bit about all our closing techniques and all the mnemonics that come with that, and that's how well the training was put across. But of course, when we got to it, Dipida, we put it down in price and down again. But that was immediately make a joke out of it and have fun with it. Because it was great fun as a job because you were doing that and it was hard work every day. It was really intense. But then pretty much every single night was straight across to the John Snow or the Blue Post and drinks. And
do you find now? I mean, you employ salespeople, business development people. Do you still use some of those things with them? Do you still kind of?
Yeah, I haven't done so much of that training. This company, I've done it with most of the business I worked before. So in fact, Media did some training, but then we had a sales director anyway. So there was kind of, we worked on various things, different industry altogether as well. Yeah. We were doing a lot of incoming inquiries there where, what you were really doing was just conversion. So quite different environments. But it's just coming incredibly handy and save the confidence.
It's a life skill.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. You in London working in this big company, a big organisation, and really firing it out with sales. What kind of happened then next? Because as you've said before, sales is one aspect, but you're an entrepreneurial guy. You've got all these other things going on.
There was a bit of arrogance on my part, I suppose, which was that I really, in some companies, some places you didn't feel valued or. That you're contributing a vast amount of sales. So you're doing maybe £1 million or £2 million of sales a year and getting paid 20 grand or something. It's not you wanted to try and say I want more piece of the action here really. And then the other one was sometimes you also looked at the products they were selling and saying actually we could do this better. So you challenge that, and sometimes that didn't come back. So one of the big change for me really was that a guy. Simon, who worked with before at VNU, approached me and said, would you like to come and join us at a company called Hillgate, who was a publishing house, and they were doing a couple of finance magazines for the North and the Midlands from London, and had a magazine called IT Consultant. But he wanted to come in and create some new stuff. So he wanted me to come and think about the new ideas, and maybe we could do some custom publishing. So we would find like a big partner, and we would take on their magazines.
And when was IT Consultant magazine? So when?
So we're talking about 1999.
Right.
And the very first meeting that we had was with a new company in the UK from America called Penton, and they had given they'd run this big show in America for this newfangled thing called the internet. And they
what on earth is that?
They had this thing called Internet World as a trade show, and then they actually own the domain name internet.com. Right. And they got a London-based organisation to organise their Internet World London show. And then we were asked, so we knew people and we got this, and we got the deal to do the trade show guide for it, so everybody came away from the show with a guide to all the exhibitors and everything else. So we won that, and I've never ever experienced sales like it. Most of it was explained before about cold calling and everything else. We were just literally sitting there with a phone going, hello, yes, you'd like to spend how much money? Thank you. How about doubling it? Oh, okay, great, thanks, bang. And honestly, it was quite extraordinary. I mean, the amount of money that was being pumped into internet companies at the time, 1999 through to 2000. And it was an extraordinary time. So we then pitched to them to launch Internet World magazine. And we launched Internet World in 2000, and I worked with some absolutely incredible people. Like the editor we had was a lady called Fiona Harvey, who's now a senior writer at The Guardian, and there was all these brilliant people that got to work on that publication. But whereas these other magazines were doing okay, suddenly this thing was doing millions. But the problem probably I'd got into it was that, the guys owned the company, fair enough, and they'd set it up and they'd taken all the risks, and I came in as a bit of a latecomer. And I didn't agree, I took a little bit of equity. I had a little bit of equity and a little bit of everything else. But, my main thing was a salaried job, really. And we had an amazing amount of success with that, and we started to do other things. And then the company sold. We got an inquiry from the same company who actually gave us the license, and they said, "Can you buy us?" And they paid several millions of pounds for us, and I made not so much money out of it. And while I was incredibly grateful, it was more money than I'd ever seen before in my life. It was like in one go. It was like, oh, thank you very much. It's incredible. Again, you realised actually, you've got to have that a bit more control. So I left there when not long after the takeover happened, because the internet market crashed. A big stock market bubble burst in 2001, 2002. So there wasn't quite the same money around. So then at the time, I was just like, what am I going to do with my life now? And I picked up some of the contracts, because they gave me a load of the contracts from the company Hillgate and said, go off and run these. So I did a few amazing things. I was working with the government, and I did all the launch materials and strategy behind Building Schools for the Future programme, which was a £22 billion programme by the last Labour government to refurbish and rebuild every school in the country. And that was an extraordinary thing, that all these people, politicians, senior civil servants, all talking to me to get all these things right, commission photographers, do everything else. And it was really exciting. And I had a number of those kind of pieces of work going on at the same time. And I said to myself, right, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to actually move back home. Yes. And come and see the family. My nana then was getting was in her 80s, and hadn't seen so much of the family for a long time. So I decided to use that time and the contracts that I had to move up here and start again. And it just, it was weird, because you go from London, where you're a small fish in a big pond, to quite a small pond where actually, you can be a bigger fish if you want to be. Mm.
So you came back and carried on doing that work. You continue to do that work, or is that around sort of, because you're coming up towards, I guess, that time when you're starting towards getting to Fat Media?
Well, I did. I mean, I was sat in my bedroom in converted one of the bedrooms at a house I bought into a little office, and it was basically just me, probably sat there in my underpants, no doubt, just kind of. And then there's all these people, probably like we've had all the way through the pandemic, and then there's people ringing me up from London going, have you got that photography shoot done? Have you got this done? Have you got this done? Have you got that done? This, thank God for all that kind of thing. And I got all these calls done. So, I mean, when we launched the Building Schools for the Future programme, I had to, we'd set all the deadlines. So we had 2 weeks of print time between when it went to print. And then I remember sitting with, it was the night before the launch at a school in North London, and it was going to be about 10:30 in the morning, and we still hadn't gone to print. And I was absolutely terrified, because it had to be in Tony Blair's hands and loads of other people, but it had to be in the Commons Library for access to every single MP at 9 a.m. And there was me still sat in Lancaster, and we hadn't had sign off. And somebody genuinely rang me and said, "Can you ring the Treasury and get them to give final sign off?" So this is me sat in Lancaster in his converted bedroom, and I turned around and said, "Excuse me, let me clarify this. You are asking me, a bloke sat up in Lancaster as your subcontractor, to get a senior official at basically the government's finance department to sign off 22 billion quid." And he went, "Yeah, that's right. That sounds utterly ridiculous. I will. I'll find somebody else to make the call." Anyway, it signed off. And amazingly, we ended up printing it at 3 different printers, because we were so panicked that it wouldn't get done. And only actually one printer came through, and the printer delivered it all, and everything was okay. So
wow, incredible.
Yeah, some fun.
And so you're back in Lancaster, and early 2000s. What happened next? Where did the career go from there? Because I'm guessing that it's around that time you started to get involved.
Yeah, so I had another business I'd set up called Five Coats. It's a funny story about that. I won't go into detail where the name came from. And but it involves drunkenness. Anyway, I set up, and it did 2 businesses really. One was an event audience generation business, and then the other side of it was a custom publishing business. And then it was doing pretty well, although it was me and some part-time staff and so on. And it was going all right. And I commissioned a small agency. I can't remember what their agency was called. There's prefab media one. It was called something like Fuzz or something. Anyway, they decided that I contacted them, and two guys came to see me, and it was Don Williams and John French, and they came to see me, and I said, fine, we'll go ahead. I'll pay you to build the website. I really like you guys, blah blah. And we started building the website, and then I got a call from them say, we've left. And your website is kind of stuck with this evil owner that we've been working for, and we've decided to set up on our own, and we've decided to call ourselves Fat Media. And I said, if you want any help, just give me a shout. I'm always happy to get involved. And they ran it for about 6 months, and they'd had a few. They'd done an amazing job. I mean, they've got some great clients and things, but what they didn't have was the skills to know about, the insurance and accounts and all these kind of things. So I got this call, just said, we ended up sitting in the field at the back of the quay, and it was basically like, we want you to come and join as MD, and we'll give you a share in the business. And it was like, fantastic, thank you. Wow. And I think my first, was
you drunk? Were you all drunk at that?
No, well, I probably got afterwards, but yeah, no, we had and to be honest, it was, I didn't know really what I got myself into, really. I mean, these government contracts.
How did they do? Because I mean, you're there with all this London experience, and I mean, because I obviously know the guys, Dom, Jake, and how did they convince you? What was the I obviously knew about what the internet boom did, and what you could see was that at this time was that only a small proportion of businesses are as websites, and it was like, well, hang on a minute. Every business can have a website, and also the technology and the opportunity around that is just going to grow and grow and grow. So I'm not saying you're on to a complete winner from day one, but if you've got the right ingredients, it wasn't that hard to make money. Yeah, and that's what I thought. And then when we started, I think my first income was 500 quid. Because what we were doing was taking a dividend out of the business, and that was 500 quid. And after a couple of months, it went magically all the way up to £1,000. So we're living on about 12 grand a year each, and it was bloody tough. I was eating into my savings because there was 5 of us from day one. So scaling. That's
was
a
really
big,
important.
big.
We had somebody part time, and we took that. How they were being paid was another story. But we took them on as a full time employee because they didn't know how to take. They were worried about taking on full time staff, and you just hit hurdles all the time. The first hurdle, we were in a shared office with what was now City Block, and we were on a floor, and it had weight constraints, so there's only 6 of us allowed in it, and it was like, Christ, we've got to get another office. Every day there was something new. So we heard then the building next door had come free, which was the old dispensary, and we converted that. And we made loads of mistakes. The funniest thing was probably we put a shag pile carpet in a white shag pile carpet as you walked in the building. So this thing was just an utter mess in about a week, horrible. And but you just learn all the time. Yeah. And we were just scaling so fast and there was just constant challenge, but constant opportunity. And it's how best you reduce the impact of those challenges and maximise the opportunities that gets you forward. So we went into there, we went to the Story, we went to underneath the Travelodge building, and then onto White Cross. So as you were growing, you were trying to find new offices and new space, new staff all the time. So what was it? 7 years went from the 5 of us to 68, and then when I left, it was 86. Staff, and we were starting off with tiny clients, like the small shops in Morecambe and tiny businesses, and then you were dealing with people like Warburton's. And
when was the first? I was going to ask that. When was the first time? Was there a point you remember where, I can imagine this 5 years. Suddenly you get that client, or and it's all like, oh wow, we're really onto it here. Was there a moment?
Oh, we had loads of them. So we started to work with JWT in Manchester with the big ad agency. So they introduced us to clients like Magnet and First Direct and stuff, where we were kind of hidden, but we were doing the work behind all those. Yeah. But we weren't visible to those clients. But what we were able to do was become the ones who, we knew that we could deliver the work. Yeah. And there's a lot of weird things that you'd never done before. So I remember Game Station, the shop, and I remember I had to send out an email newsletter because And we just said, yeah, we can do email newsletters. So we put it all onto a system. And I had to get to Morecambe Football Club for a match. So I was sat in the press box at Morecambe Football Club. The first time I sent a Game Station email newsletter to 50,000 people. So I think it was even more than that, actually. It was about I remember saying it's about the size of the population of Northampton. I'm about to hit with an email.
Yeah.
And I can see all the data and all the information going to be pouring through. And I had to get a connection. And I must have checked it about 15 times because I was so paranoid about sending it out. And finally I was like, yeah, okay, great. Bang. And then you could see it just landing in all these inboxes, and you're like, "Wow, these are really powerful times." And you knew what you could do and achieve, and you can see the sales just pour back into the system off the back of that. It's amazing.
When you say there was the 5-year, and you're the person that has been made MD, how did you find kind of managing that, group of?
Yeah, I think in retrospect, I think you and it's the same with staff. So. I think one of the things I was always really conscious of, it goes right back to when I was younger, is that if you don't enjoy your job, then it's time to leave. And I really wanted to try and make, and I think all of us shared that opinion, that we wanted to make it as fun a place to be as possible. We did, we had, free drinks and blah, blah, blah. We had parties, we had everything you can possibly imagine. And we just wanted to make it enjoyable. And I think the other side that I wanted to give it, and I think we were all of the same mindset, was that we wanted to give stability to the people who worked there. So there was a lot of people who were putting a lot of faith in us to come and work with us. But I remember always saying, somebody asked me once, he said, what's the most successful, what does success mean at Fat Media? And I said, well, I'll give you two things. I mean, we give about 2 million quid a year in tax back into the economy. So that's like, your rates, your everything, even the tax your staff pay and everything else. And then you think about all the average wages, which are way above the average. So Fat Media, our wage was way above the average for locals. That means people have disposable income. But then I said the other one was that there'd been over 20 babies born. And that sounds mad, but there'd been over 20 babies born because people felt comfortable enough that they could settle down, they could get married, or whatever, or they felt comfortable to have, that they're financially secure enough to go and have kids and stuff. And that for me was like a real kind of marker. And I think that was really the all-encompassing success. We all felt good about what we did. From a business perspective and a management perspective, I mean, we were always challenged. You were all, with clashing heads, and in private, we did it properly, and I think that was a really good thing. It wasn't so public or anything else, but you had clashes over strategy and direction. So you look on it, and it's maybe a bit Captain Hindsight or whatever, but we could have done a lot more. We talked about setting up a hosting business. We never did it, and probably would have done really well off the back of that. We could have probably spun out some of the ideas that we developed, and some we didn't do them. But you know what? I mean, in terms of having a good time and doing a lot of good stuff, and then at the end of it, making a few quid out of it when we sold it, it was every bit of it was. You look back on it and just
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, and again, look, talking about the kind of baby stuff, but actually, there's people who've gone on to do amazing stuff. So you've got a good friend of mine, Tony Cheetham, set up a business called Shipster in Manchester, and he's absolutely flying at the moment. You've got Dom, who's actually based here now with his Digitap business. And you've got, everybody's gone on to do something a bit different and a bit special, and it's really brilliant to see that happening.
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because again, and part one of the roles you do a lot of work with Hotfoot now, and you look around, and we've had this conversation before, like with Mark at Hallam, and the businesses he's got, but Fat Media as well. I'm sure that you look around the city, and so many of the businesses now that are in digital tech, you can probably trace back to what you guys did at Fat Media, and so many of the.
Yeah, I mean, so some of the people who were with us have gone on to go and work with those businesses and doing really good things. But I think one new point I think just giving back is, again, we said going back to the greats of Lancaster. I'm not saying that I'm anything like those people, God no. But I just feel that I should give back. So one of the things that we as business, we gave back to charity. So we supported Lancaster Boys and Girls Club, Lancashire Association of Boys and Girls Clubs. We supported loads of charities. Every time a charity came to us and said, they said we were really struggling. The agency's gone and turned off our website. We said, we'll do one for nothing. We always had that kind of mentality, and the staff joined in and built stuff. And the other one was that after I'd sold Fat Media as well, it was that the success wasn't mine. It was success for everybody. So how do you then do things? So obviously setting up Digital Lancashire was was an important thing. So getting together with other agency owners who had the same issues and challenges that we got all those, we got that set up. And then, getting involved in Hotfoot and giving them a bit of support. And, people used to ring you all the time. And if you can't be there for others, you do unto others, you do unto yourself kind of thing,
Incredible. And again, back to just a reminder, chatting. If anybody wants to ask any questions, then please, the microphone's set up to do so. So I'll just make your way across. So you mentioned there these other pursuits that you had after you finished with and sold out and left Fat Media, and Miralis. Overnight success, or
no, not at all, not at all. I mean, it was complete and utter.
I think I remember coming and seeing you and Will probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, in a little one of the little rooms at Elsewhere right across. How was that?
There was the reality was there was no plan. I mean, after Fat Media, I just wanted to do something different and a bit interesting. So I did a lot of government work doing for the growth strategies, the growth accelerators, and so on. So I went to see working with companies in Manchester and Lancaster and around about. And one of them was a company called UK Bathroom Store, for example, and I helped turn that company around. It was struggling at the time. It was in a bit of a financial state, and we've turned that around. And they actually, I've got shares in that now, and it's a business that I still am involved in and support. And it's a brilliant team, and we've trebled revenues and gone on to do really good stuff. And that in itself was great fun. And then some of the clients that I worked with in Manchester were brilliant, great fun. So when Will and I got that office together, the reason why it wasn't because we were going to work together to set up a new business. It was simply to share an office space. He lived across the road, and he was like in the family home, and I was in my family home, and it was just like we couldn't work. So we said, let's go and get an office together, and then we'll see what happens. And it took a year. I carried on doing my work. He carried on doing his, really. And then it was just at a point that we decided, hang on a minute, let's go and your stuff. You're doing all this consultancy work, and then you kind of give them a solution, and then you leave. Why can't you just turn that solution into something else? And we thought, okay, let's give that a go and work it out. And we started to work on a few projects. But it was really when we started to refine, and we talked about the whole thing about reducing carbon emissions in transport, because fundamentally that's what Will did. He optimized transport and logistics using data science and algorithms and everything else. So there was just an opportunity there, and we saw it, and we said, right, let's coalesce everything behind that and let's go for it. And we won a few grants, and then that spiraled and became bigger and bigger and bigger. And since the pandemic, gone from 4 of us to how many? 20. Yeah, 20. Yeah, bonkers. And that's in a year. And we're now working with really ridiculously fantastic organisations.
So tell us then, so Miralis data that the company, but you now working on the Fuse platform, which sounds incredibly exciting. Tell us a little bit more about that business then.
Well, I go back to what I said before, which is if you think about, and this is for obviously people watching, they're thinking about where kind of going to a business area. In the early days of the internet, people wanted an website, and they said, "Hello, can you make me a website? What kind of things do you want in your website? Oh, nice pictures. Can you make it really look really flashy and everything else?" But you could tell immediately that mobile phones were developing and everything else. That first of all, there was growth. So all you needed to do was get the website first, and you could grow that. So there would be new iterations all the time of the website, and then you would get more and more and more clients. But also you could add in extra services. So it became apparent very quickly that things like search engine optimization, pay-per-click, and everything else were all going to come. And so you could see, I could see it all in front of me, but you couldn't run to that bit. You had to just work your way to it. And the electric vehicles market is exactly the same. So between now and 2030, we're at the stage now where about 6% of the sales of all vehicles in the UK are purely electric, and only 1% of all vehicles on the road are electric. But by 2030, every single vehicle being sold will be an electric vehicle. So knowing that, there's a horizon out there, and the opportunity is absolutely vast. So at the moment, people are saying, how do I charge my car? Well, I'll just get one of them charger things, plug it in, get somebody to put it in, right? But what they haven't thought about is, hang on a minute, how do I get more of them? What if I've got enough electricity to come into my site to do this. Hang on a minute, it's cheaper to charge at night. How do I benefit from that? And then all of a sudden you can start to see all those iterations and all those big areas. Like, how do we transition fire engines and police cars and all these kind of things to electric when they do different things, bin lorries? And you can see a raft of opportunity just rolling out in front of you. We've got competition, and we've no doubt both the UK and overseas, but it's such an early stage market that I think we're in a phenomenal position to benefit from it.
It's really interesting there. That moment that you said, you look out and think that the market's there, the opportunities are there. And hearing all this and hearing you talking about the successes that you've had, what do you think, or what would you say perhaps other people would say about you? What do you think is your key skill? Like, what's the thing? What do you think is the thing that's kind of supporting your successes about? What do you think?
That's a good question. I mean, everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. So, I've got weaknesses, plenty of them, and and not everything's been easy. I've made a hell of a lot of mistakes, and the danger with these kind of things is it always makes somebody sound big and clever, but you're always learning. And I think that's one thing that I've always done, is always learned. Because what you think is right and what you think your expectation is, you've got to adjust and you've got to change and you've got to think, because you will always find new opportunity and you will always find ways to improve. So I think that's undoubtedly been one of them. I've always said that my dad never kissed a Blarney Stone, he swallowed it. And I think it's really important to be able to, just talk to people.
Yeah.
Just talk to people, have the confidence to engage with people. And I think just, willingness to do things that others might not do. Why not? That massive company's doing a big tender. Yeah, but we're tiny. Why? What? Let's go for it.
Do it. Go
for it. You never know what'll happen.
Someone just asked on the chat, what moves did you make during the pandemic to grow? How has that period helped? Has that period helped support your business?
Yeah, I think from a general level, I think it's lots of different things that came out of the pandemic. I've got a certain belief in, and I think we as a team we share it. I think that actually working from home definitely has its negatives. So you can't socially engage. Collaboration becomes a challenge. You can do certain things over the internet. But the one thing you are is more productive. There isn't that level of interruption. There isn't a level of breakout meetings for no reason or whatever, this kind of thing, and popping down the shop or whatever. And actually, you end up getting a lot more stuff done. So I think we've been incredibly more productive. The other thing is that there was a vast amount of opportunities that we could take advantage of. That in the markets that we were working in, we were able to use video technology to perhaps get access to organisations quicker and faster than we'd ever done before. So all of a sudden we were talking to people in Germany and France and Spain and doing work projects so we picked a major client in Paris just before the lockdown, and we'd flown over to Paris twice. And after that, we actually did the project better by just simply having video calls. Yeah. Because we could pick up the phone at any time and just get started. And it was almost like you didn't think about doing those kind of things pre-pandemic. It was always there. But all of a sudden, it just became second nature. And suddenly we'd access to markets and people that we never had before.
Do you think it's interesting you say that. Do you think that the fact that we've kind of taken this whole travel inefficiency away and we've replaced it with video, is that kind of speeding up opportunity then, do you think?
I think so. I think go back to the sales kind of stuff. Sometimes when you see the whites of people's eyes, obviously I was selling things over the phone and stuff. Yeah. But still, face-to-face was the most important part of actually formalising and getting a really good relationship with somebody. Just the whites of your eyes or having a beer or whatever it might be. And I think everybody does miss that kind of component of it. But And it will still be vital for what we do, particularly for like major partnerships, bigger clients and everything else, that we go out and see them and go and do that. But not with the intensity that you did before, because you can have that one big first meeting, maybe another follow-up a year later, face-to-face, but in between, get on a video call, do things. So, a trip to Leicester, go and see a client. I could be leaving at 9 o'clock in the morning, getting there at midday, doing an hour-long meeting and driving all the way back again. And I could probably do maybe a couple of calls from the car or something hands-free, whatever, but it isn't the same. Now I can do 7 of those in one day, in theory, if I wanted to. So all of a sudden, that all those meetings have been brought into the house or into here to have those calls.
Again, I think we've got a couple of people questions. If you want to come down to the microphone, you can absolutely ask.
Hello.
Hiya.
Yeah. So basically, as you've been moved back to Lancaster for a very long time, what would you see Lancaster in the next 5 years, apart from the industry you're in? Like, what can be improved in here, and what kind of advantage in Lancaster that we should keep on and bring forward?
Thank you. No, it's a great question. I mean, the one thing, and Dan will know this, is I absolutely love this city. I think this is I'm genuine, and this is probably one of the best places to live in the UK. So first of all, that's your starting ground. You know, you've got amazing places to play, if you like. You know, you've got the Lake District, you've got the Yorkshire Dales, we're surrounded by water. You know, this is a wonderful place to live. And I think first of all, we've got to build on that. And I think and we've got to have a bit more control over our own destiny. So that's having things like, you know, civic leaders that we go to one organisation. So we've currently got a county council and a city council and whatever. We're talking now about having one body, and I think that'll help improve things. I do think we have to do a lot more around some of the issues that have been talked about even today, like improving the general environment. You know, I think this place is small enough but big enough that it can also be a living lab. I think we can use this as a testing ground and a place for betterment. So we've got an amazing university. We've got like the Imagination Lancaster programme at the moment, which is about £4.5 5 million. I'd love to see loads of that money coming into the city and saying, how do we get fossil fuel vehicles off the road? How do we get more pedestrianisation? How do we improve the health and well-being of the public? And I think Lancaster, if it put itself forward as being a place where you can test ideas and test things and innovation and prototyping, the people here, this is the most important thing, the people here are incredible. I mean, the people you meet every day are just, it's mind-boggling where people come from. I meet senior Google executives who've moved here. I've met, you know, brilliant writers. The guy who writes the thick of it, one of the guys who writes the thick of it lives in Lancaster. One of the Britain's top comic writers who wrote Hollywood Film lives here. You know, there's just go on and on and on. It's brilliant. And we need to leverage all that as well. So, you know, and we just need to keep creating the kind of infrastructure because this place is very, very special. So in 5 years' time, how do I see Lancaster 5 years' time? Man, I'd love to see that we've only got one council. So in other words, we can start to allow things to focus and also that we start to do the great things that we have our potential. And one of that is just lifting the lid and shining a light on what the good things are that happen here. You know, this place is brilliant, but, you know, and we'll get people to find out about it. But we want more of these. You know, we want people to know how great it is to live here. We want to know how great businesses there are. You know, mine, Relative Insight, all the fantastic companies that are in this city, really. And I think that's one of the things that will just keep on unlocking doors and making it better.
Okay. Yeah,
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've also had a couple of people on the chat as well, Mike. So I'm going to just go into here. My friend Nick Ganacliffe has asked, if someone else entered your business and disrupted it, what could they do?
I think somebody could. What if somebody came into Miralis now and?
Yeah, Miralis or.
Yeah, I mean they'd have a world of opportunity. I mean, there's so much going on that, you know, somebody could look at it in a completely different way. And
is that part of the challenge though as well?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, you know, at the moment we're doing. Martin, who's at the back there, he'll agree, but we're doing way too much. I mean, we're doing so many different things. So what we've got to do is, and it's in danger of overwhelming us. So in other words, that, you know, we've got to generate the revenues to then recruit to solve some of the things. So you've got that constant balance that you're trying to get. And there's undoubtedly, you know, we're missing some other key personnel or people who could help us. And I think we all know it, and we know where our weaknesses lie and how we can improve things. But it's trying to be creative and imaginative about how we get to those next stages. So, you know, one of the things we can do is start looking at, and we are, is things like non-exec directors. We're looking at investment. And when we've got a great idea, we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
We could sell it, or we could, you know, just let somebody else do it and take a share of it, or we could do a joint venture, or we could do different things. So we're involved in all those kind of conversations as well. So we've got a couple of really, really exciting products that are just sat there. I'm not saying they're on a shelf, but they're being worked on. But I don't know where we'll be able to do it. So we're working with partnerships to try and see how they can pick up those.
You've moved the business in here into Fraser House. Do you see that is a way of maybe forging those relationships where you can meet new people and say, actually, we're not going to do this, but do you want to have a look at this? Or?
Yeah, I mean, the space is fantastic. I mean, obviously, I've campaigned for this for a long time, so I'm not going to say anything else, frankly. But it is a wonderful place, and but to be honest, given my experience in Lancaster, most of the people I've met here I know, which is lovely. It's great to be able to sit with brilliant people and talk to brilliant people, and there's a real buzz about it. And I think that really adds value to the business. I think though in future as well that we're going to we build relationships at the university too, and hopefully those people come here, and we can build more of that. The other one is in the sectors in which we operate, we're keeping them finding more and more and more really kind of powerful relationships where we can call on their expertise and help and support in giving us more direction. It's really exciting.
Grand. What Michael was alluding to there, by the way, and he's not going to being too humble and too gracious, but a big reason for this, the reason we got this building here was a report that Michael wrote several years ago that really prompted the public sector to look into opening a space suitable for startups, suitable for growing businesses, and that is really where this journey has come to now. So I know that, John, if you want to come to the microphone, I know you've got a question, but I've just got another question here that I'm going to ask quickly, so if that's all right. Kamal, who is watching on the stream and a good friend of ours, has asked advice for startups to go about funding, getting grants, anything that you could recommend, any suggestions there?
It depends on obviously what the business is. If you're a business that's doing a Me Too business, you've opened a restaurant or doing something that everybody else is doing, you're going to find to get those kind of grant money is going to be more challenging. So the area we primarily work in is innovation. So we're looking at and where you've got clever innovations or unique products, the government will support that, and government and other funding bodies. Even amazingly, we can still work with Horizon Europe, so the European Union funding as well. So there are things, I would just say to you, go to things like the Innovate UK website. There's UK RI, there's KTN, the Knowledge Transfer Network. Obviously, work with Lancaster University. And there's a huge amount of things like Boost Lancashire, but there's actually quite a lot of support. So that's human support for businesses that are growing, but there's also monetary support as well. If you've got the right idea and the right thing, and you can put that across clearly, then you can generate, there's money there to support you. So, and they're weird and wonderful things. So we did a great project. We just did a great project with Transport Scotland, where we're working on how electric vehicles can. So the bays where electric vehicles park aren't occupied. So they're blocked by a non-EV or an EV that's charged and then hasn't moved. So we can get more vehicles charging. And Transport Scotland and Scottish Enterprise have been absolutely brilliant in supporting our work on that. And we're now bidding for a second phase where, because of the awareness that's built up, we're working now with Glasgow City Council and other bodies to accelerate that. And there's a journey there, and if people kind of understand how these grants and funding work, it really is a great way to spin out your business and give you the support to that product development phases.
Right, thank you. John, I'm going to pass over to
you.
Hi,
I'm John Mullen. I've grown up in the IT industry for the last 25 years, but now I'm actually wondering, is the energy business going to be even bigger than the IT industry for our future? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's like every other sector. Everybody talks about the techs, fintech, med tech, all these kind of things, and the kind of energy tech, electricity tech area is a massive growth opportunity, because there's and I think it's one really interesting thing actually to consider, and it goes back to the point you made before, is that actually, because we were talking about before, the market for websites, but other stuff for electric vehicles is often dictated by government. So the reason why people like Stagecoach and Virgin and all these kind of people grew was they grew off the back of changes in government policy. So a classic example is in 4 years' time, all electricity contracts, be they domestic or commercial, will be on a half-hourly tariff. You won't have one price that you pay for your electric day and night, or a two-phase one. You have a day-night tariff. The price will change every half an hour. Now that is absolutely transformative, because what it means is that people will be at home going, hang on a minute. So if I turn the washing machine on now, it costs me £1. But if I turned it on at 3 o'clock in the morning, it cost me 50p. Right, okay, well, I'll put the washing machine on at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, how do I do that? I can't set an alarm and get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and put the washing machine on. So either the washing machine has to do itself, or I have to find some other way. And there alone, just thinking about that, that's when your electric vehicle charges, when your lights come on, when your lights go off, how everything's done. That's transformative. And there's already tons and tons of businesses, startups and scale-ups already doing this, thinking about the opportunities. But also then you start to think, hang on a minute, electricity is really expensive at this time. So if I went and charged a battery, I charged a battery in the middle of the night when it was really cheap, I could release that at night, and then that would mean I get the 50p electricity instead of at the £1 time or the £1.50 time. Hang on a minute, I've just saved loads of money. How much does the battery cost? Oh, the batteries are coming down in price. So suddenly, everybody starts to then invest in batteries and all the technology around it. And so the point is, it's going to be absolutely transformative. A, because of decarbonisation, B, because changes in policy and things like that. And if you follow government policy, you can guarantee there's an opportunity. And this is a huge one. So yeah, electricity markets are absolutely massive. And there's literally hundreds of companies in the UK. And we're actually far ahead of everybody else. So you probably heard of Octopus. Octopus have developed a piece of technology called Kraken, which powers electricity contracts. And that's selling all around the world. So big Australian company, Chilean companies, and they've got an office in the States and things. They're just one example, but there's hundreds more.
Thanks.
We're coming up to, we've gone over the 45 minutes. You won't be surprised to find out. We're still going. But I think we're coming up to, and if anyone has any final questions, then please fire over. But I think as we wrap up, Michael, I wanted to kind of ask about anyone who really, if you were kind of there saying to someone now, two things. Someone who's starting a business, what would you be advising them? And somebody thinking about a career in Lancaster, what would you be saying? What would the kind of call to action be?
Oh my God, there's a lot of things going on there. If there was a piece of advice that I would give, there's so many. I mean, become an expert. If you're going to do something, become the expert, because people pay experts way, way more money than they pay just an also-ran. So if you want to sell a particular product, become the best that there is in it, because at knowing about that product, because everybody will come to you, and typically they pay you more money. Other things, don't swim in a Red Sea, swim in a Blue Sea. So if you're in a Red Sea, basically you're up there with all the competition. It's like sharks fighting, there's blood and everything else, and you're giving that. What you're doing is you're sacrificing yourself because you're having a discount. You're trying to do everything else. Move into the Blue Sea, become the only player, become somebody who does something differently, because then you can set your own price, you can set your own direction, you can set how your own work. Be happy, enjoy your job. If you don't enjoy your job, don't do it, find another one. If somebody is disrupting your company and it's disrupting the business so badly that, do something about it. Don't prevaricate, whatever, find a solution, work it out, get it done.
And what about the city?
The city, it's just, it depends what you're doing. You'll get a ton of support around it. If you ask for it, you'll get it. So ask. Go and talk to Boost. Go and talk to brilliant people like Andrew Lehman or many of his team. Go and talk to the university. Go and talk to you, because you know everybody and you'll introduce them. And if they don't know, you'll send them my way and I'll probably introduce them. So one way or another, but don't be alone. The loneliest place. One of the loneliest places is being a business owner. It's a terribly lonely place, and it can get to you get the stress, you get the stress levels, you put on a bit too much weight, blah blah blah. And you've got to find ways and means of getting that out of your system. So build networks. Go and share your thoughts. Ask for help, because people will. There's some lot of good people out there, and they will help you.
Brilliant, thank you. I think in the absence of questions, are going to bring it to a close, Michael. But I mean, it's been a fascinating conversation, and I think on behalf of so many people in the city region, the spirit and support that you give to the businesses, the help I've experienced it over the last 12 months, the mentorship, the help, the support, and I'm sure there's so many other people in this room watching, would just like to thank you for that continued, push that you give to the businesses in the region and support, and not just the businesses as well, but the city as a whole. What you do, the way you speak out on behalf of so many people. A big thank you for that, and you've certainly an inspiration to me, and I'm sure so many other people.
It's incredibly kind of you. I'm not sure it's all deserved, but I mean, I think the reason why that you do it, obviously, it's part of it's in your nature, but I think the other thing is that Lancaster deserves it. This is a city that doesn't shout enough and just doesn't say just how wonderful it is.
Yeah.
And perhaps we need to just do that. Or maybe we don't say it and we just keep it all to ourselves.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the secret, and we're heading the wrong way.
It's been brilliant, and
thank you.
And again, congratulations on everything that's been done with the Area Festival and this building and the team. It's been brilliant.
Good, great, thank you. So that's day 3, final day tomorrow. We have a great networking session in the morning, a virtual networking session. So I want as many of you as possible to tune in for this networking. We're talking about how we as businesses can work together to support the climate emergency. How can we work with the county council, the city council, chambers of commerce, and as businesses, how can we come together as one to really make sure that this city is really doing its bit and more, leading the way with the climate emergency. And then tomorrow afternoon, we're wrapping up with some really inspirational lightning talks, people telling us, give a little 5-minute talks on just some wonderful innovations they've been doing over the last 12 months in the face of adversity. So thank you once again. Thanks to Michael. Thank you all for the questions, and we'll see you tomorrow.